guys, welcome back to Clearly Becoming Season 2, a podcast all about empowering ambitious individuals as they navigate their 20-somethings in their career and life in general. And this is your reminder that you can be ambitious and confused at the same time. So let's get into it. We've all been there where we've gone down the rabbit hole of stalking an ex, either a friend, relationship, whatever it is. And we go on Instagram or TikTok, wherever we find ourselves, and we're looking like, oh, what do they look like? Are they prettier than me? Where did they go to university? Oh my gosh, they have so many more skills than I do. Look at their hobbies, look at their accomplishments. And it just gets so jarring and overwhelmed, and you just never leave feeling good about yourself. I just think it's so interesting that this same thing where we go stalking an ex, either a relationship or friend, it parallels with careers. Because how many times do we also stalk the competition? Either if you're an athlete, you stalk, the people that you're going to compete against, or if it's a career, who's going to apply for that job. And it's just, it all lives in the same realm. And I don't think we talk about the similarities of stalking an ex and then also stalking just the competition in the career force as well. And so I really wanted to look into why do we stalk the competition, and why does comparing ourselves to other people constantly drain and decrease our sense of self and our sense of self-worth. And so that's what I wanted to get into in this episode. And I found some really cool research articles and just studies and what happens in the brain, because I think the level of insight always helps to gain that awareness. Once you understand the research behind it and our tendencies as humans, that's how we can actually instigate change. And so, yeah, definitely an exciting episode. And I've also just been overhearing so much about competition and just how it really impacts us from friends and everything like that. So let's spill the tea. And all of these examples that I bring are normally coming from my life, either friends or things that I've witnessed. And so it's definitely not abstract. These are real things that are happening in real life. I know a lot of internships are ending right now. A lot of people are going back to university, and I was that last year. I had just finished my internship and I had such an amazing experience. And I truly feel blessed that I had such a good experience, because I know that's not always the case for people. But I left feeling so fulfilled and that I really, really wanted to come back. I actually didn't even want to go back to university because of how much love I felt for that internship. And so I think that's one, just knowing that really tells you something. And is it the company? Is it the job that you're in? What value are you deriving out of that experience that you want so badly? How is that aligned to what you want? First, to notice that. Because I think sometimes when you end something, end a chapter, either when you're ending an episode or either when you're ending like a TV show. I know when I end Modern Family or Friends, I always get so sad because I'm like, oh my gosh, like now I have to find something new to watch, or I just rerun it, which, maybe I should find some new material. But I know ending things doesn't always feel good, because then you have to find something else, or you're like, oh, I really enjoyed this. I don't want it to end. And you want to savor it a little bit more. And so that's kind of how I felt about the internship. And I know other people feel exactly that same way. And what I think was more jarring about the situation is that I had no return offer. Now, some internships do have a return offer and you can come back to it, and you know that in a year you'll be going back, or sometimes return offers come a little bit quickly than others. I know it depends on different industries. A lot of finance industries, you get the return offer and things like that. But since I work in fashion, you normally just have on-demand jobs. So when a role comes up or whatever, it's not really on your timing per se. And so that's always annoying, because you're left with this uncertainty, especially after you've had such a great experience. It's like, oh my gosh, what if I don't have that opportunity again? It's that scarcity mindset that lives through our brains, which is so, so annoying. And so when you have this kind of unresolved feeling, that beats the reassuring feelings of what you've just had. It kind of erases all of that good stuff that you had been feeling before, because you're no longer in control. And as humans, we love control. And so, yeah, that no return offer really puts you into that anxiety spiral. And so how do you plan the next 6 months when you have no idea if an opportunity is actually going to arise? And then also, what if somebody takes the good spots before I can even do that? I have to graduate in May or June or July or whenever it is. What if somebody takes the opportunity that comes in December because they graduated early, the position that I really wanted? What happens then? And then, am I doing enough right now, or am I falling behind? I know this can get so big for us. And I know, speaking for myself, that I'm constantly thinking, am I doing enough? Am I showing my best capabilities? Is somebody else having another experience? I remember falling into this loop where I stalked somebody on LinkedIn, and they were actually a grade below me in high school, and they had done so many more experiences than me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm behind. I'm behind. I also took a gap semester, so I already felt like I was a little bit behind in just the education aspect. But I think what can really help pull you out of this spiral is really focusing on when you are looking at a LinkedIn profile or when you're on these apps and you're stalking and you're going down that rabbit hole, what are you there for? Like, what is the purpose that you're trying to get out of it? Because if you're there just to look at people's opportunities and just like constantly scroll down and get stuck in that rabbit hole, you're going to leave feeling really depleted and kind of crappy because you're like, oh my gosh, they have so many experience as me. But if you're going on LinkedIn for the pure reason to see what's out there and be inspired, like I switched it around and I was like, oh my gosh, they had these opportunities. Well, I've never heard of those. Those seem like really cool experiences. What if I apply for them the next term or the next year? Because that's what I want to do. And then you can realize, like, is this something that you even want to do? I didn't even want to do design. So why was I looking at a design experience? Why was I basing my self-worth off of something that I didn't even want to do? So when you're going on these apps, I think a really good, handy thing to do to get you out of that anxiety spiral is to realize, is this really aligning with your values and what you want to do? And if it is, use it as inspiration, not to say that you're behind, but what you could do. And I think that really helps. And then I also think something that has really come to me lately is that when you constantly want to plan and have things all figured out, you're essentially putting a ceiling on your potential. And what I mean by this is that if you constantly are like, "Oh, I want to have this job in the next 6 months, or I want to have this role. Well, how do you know that in 6 months that's going to be the same thing that you want? It's okay to see things and plan out your future, but also don't always get so stuck to the outcome because you never know what could change, what opportunities could arise. You could have a class that you're really interested in and then see that there's a different role that you might be a better fit for or that maybe inspires you a little bit more. And so just because you have things fixed in your mindset right now doesn't mean in the next 2 to 3 weeks, even, that would be the same thing that you want. When you don't put a limit on your potential and your planning, that really opens more doors and opportunities that you might have not seen. And hence why it's so important to remain in the present moment because you never know what could open up for you. And that brings me back to, the lucky case study where if somebody thinks they're lucky or not, they see opportunities rather than the ones who deem themselves unlucky. It's really all about the perspective and how you're talking to yourself. So keep that in mind. And then number 2 is another friend of mine. They actually had a lot of things working out from them. They had an internship. They graduated from university. They had the resume virtues, as you call it. But hiring was really difficult for them. I mean, right now in our landscape, it's really difficult to get employed, especially at entry level. I believe we're down about 29% of entry level jobs, and unemployment is roughly 2.5 times the overall rate. And then also a large share of last year's and this year's graduating class still haven't landed a job in their field. And they've had to really broaden their job search and job positions when they're looking to be hired because of this. And this isn't to excuse anything or to instate that learned helplessness, like, oh my gosh, the world is out for me. I can't get a job because the market is down. No, it's just to give you a little bit of insight that it is a difficult time period right now and to give yourself a little bit of grace that it might not always happen on your timeline. You might not always graduate and get a job immediately. I feel really, really blessed that a position opened up for me in the timeline that I wanted. And yes, I put in the hard work, and yes, I applied, and yes, I worked on my CV, my cover letter, did the interviews, prepared as much as possible. But also the reality is that that position opened up for me in the time that was good. It happened before actually I even graduated. Give yourself a little bit of grace because it is a difficult period right now. Back to that friend, yeah, they're struggling to find a job and they're measuring their timeline against other people. But the cool thing is, and I want to bring in a theory here, is Festinger's social comparison theory, and that we have a tendency to compare ourselves to those that are most similar to us. We pull from a similar pool, not from like the celebrity. And so we pull from looking at people who are in the same internship program as us or in the same university cohort as us. And that pool we grab from, not like the people that have our 25-year-old founder or Emma Raducanu. I mean, amazing. Maybe people in her tennis field might be comparing themselves to her, but I know I'm not. But it is very cool. And especially now with social media, I mean, we're seeing people, especially young people, that the barrier to success has gotten so much lower because of social media and just because of so many opportunities arising. I mean, you can go viral from TikTok super easily. Now, to actually maintain that hype is a little bit more difficult, but it's easier. The barriers to entry have lowered significantly. And so definitely we're comparing ourselves to a similar pool as us, but this is where the positional bias comes in, which means that from that pool of people that are similar to us, we always look towards not the median or the average. We look to like the top people in that pool. And so we look at the people who've already got the jobs. We look at the people who have better experience than us. Let's say you have an intern class of 57, 60 people. We look at like the top 3 who've gotten those return offers or gotten a job that they really like. We don't look at other people who might be also struggling the same. And we also might not realize, we never know the full story with people. Just because they have a job doesn't mean that maybe they love it. Doesn't mean that it was their first option. There's so many things behind the camera and behind people that you never know of. Maybe it just so happened that they took it because it was something that they needed at the moment. So I think it's really easy to jump to conclusions and create scenarios in our head that are totally hypothetical without really seeing the data and the reality from it. And you also never know what a person is going through. I think it's just really important to realize those things about who we're comparing ourselves to and what are we comparing ourselves to. Now I want to go into friend 3, another example, and this is the one who ghosts you. And I think I've talked a little about this. I know I have a Substack about why are people ghosting you, and definitely check that out because it's so interesting to me. And as somebody that has been ghosted and also sometimes ghosts, I'm not proud of it. I think it's just interesting what happens in the brain. So check that out. I think nowadays it's really easy to ghost people again because of social media. And I've seen it a lot in hiring as well as dating. But hiring, you don't always hear back if you've gotten rejected, or you don't always hear back if you didn't get the interview. I mean, it's nice when you do sometimes. At least it gives you that closure again because of that ambiguous loss. So with ghosting, I lost my train of thought for a minute. But with that kind of ghosting, when your boss maybe reschedules or they don't reply to you immediately, and then you think like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Why are they not answering you back? What has happened? I think this happens a lot in hiring. And again, with the employment level being so low, we tend to spiral. Also, having flaky communication really gets us anxious about where we stand for certain. Again, is that certainty that we're chasing. So why I bring this up is because I've seen where sometimes peers have gotten ghosted by their bosses or managers, and then their immediate thing is like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? And also, who is the next best person? Am I going to get fired? Is there somebody better? Who are they hiring? Are they hiring an additional person to help out? And am I being replaced by that person? I mean, we always jump to like the worst conclusion possible. And honestly, maybe that could be it, and you'll figure it out from there. Or maybe it could just be like they needed an extra hand. I know that I was hired because they just needed another assistant in that department. Didn't mean that they were replacing the assistant that they had there. And so it's always so easy to jump to conclusions. Also, we always tend to focus on the worst case scenario instead of the actual reality that we're living in. Because my friend whose maybe boss was like hiring somebody else, they were also still giving them work. They had also offered them a potential job offer after a certain amount of time. And so like we always tend to focus on the worst things. We don't actually focus on the good things that are happening as well. And yes, I think there's a balance of being cautious and then also optimistic. But I think it's really easy to always focus on the bad things because that is where we feel threatened. And that's when our amygdala takes over and our emotional bit is just in full on charge mode. We don't always see the the peripheral view of what's actually happening, the big picture. Just because there's worst case scenario happening doesn't mean that there's also not good things happening as well. I think from these examples, you can really see how parallel it is with career and dating. And it's like that same wiring existing on different apps and different paths. And so I just think it's really cool. Another example, I guess, of positional bias, which is where we compare upward and to paragons, not to the realistic average. I think for like with dating, it's never the average person that my partner could have dated. It's always that one specific person I know is more impressive, who's prettier, who's better, who is more skills than I do, whatever it is. It's the same thing in the hiring realm as well. It's like you look at the LinkedIn of somebody who is running in your exact same pool, like has been in your program, but got the job, got the internship, got the experience, got the referral, went to the master's program. It's always like what they have. And remember that these apps are designed to really trigger your dopamine. But I think something that's really misconceived about dopamine is, yes, it's a reward circuit, but there's two kinds of reward circuits. One is the wanting and one is the liking. And this is why values are so imperative to understand about yourself, because once you realize what's important to you, for example, autonomy is important, or a really good manager is important, or a work-life balance is important to you, then you can tailor your wants and likes based on those things. It's easy to just always outsource and see like, oh my gosh, they have this, this, and that. But do you even want those things for yourself? And that's where I think the catch is, because dopamine in the sense of these apps are always triggered by the want and desire, but it's not actually about the like. And so we can want things, but do we actually like the things that we're so-called wanting? So just a little bit of insight into what dopamine is. I think it's really interesting. And then also, I feel like why our confidence cracks so easily is because of this illusory superiority. And what this is that most people rate themselves above average in general terms, but that confidence lives at an abstract level. It's when you're given that random survey, like, do you think you're good at playing tennis? Or do you think you're good at communication? Blah, blah, blah. And so then you're like, yes, I am good. Or yes, I am a strong candidate. But when it gets a little bit more specific and it really pinpoints those things, or you see like a named rival appear, then that confidence collapses. So it's when you're seeing that LinkedIn person or when you're stalking the competition, because then you see something specific. It's no longer abstract. They got this job, they got this role, they got this opportunity, whatever it might be. And then you're feeling like, I didn't get that. And so it's a thing of like scarcity. Because somebody has taken a bigger chunk of the pie out, now there's less for me. And it goes into that spiral and that downward threat. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm going nowhere. I'm so behind. And, so many people are better than me. It's really interesting how your confidence cracks so fast. Well, let's get into the bit about how we actually use these insights to make a change in our life, because this is also real. And I feel like it's so important to sit in these feelings and understand and acknowledge these tendencies. But if we just stay put in this zone, we go into that learned helplessness where we think we are a victim to the world. And the whole point of these episodes that I hope to instill and create is a feeling of inspiration and motivation to actually change your life. Because again, you are the architect of your life. You are the narrator of the book that you're living. And you have to take control of your life. You have to make the changes. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it is something that you have to do in order to grow. And don't get me wrong, it is definitely hard. It's complicated. Sometimes I don't even want to do it. Just because I'm aware of these things doesn't mean that I'm perfect. I make mistakes hundreds of times. And actually, I think the next episode is going to be about me making a mistake and going down that spiral, and just how I look back at it and I'm like, wow, Hazelyn, like, it wasn't that big of a deal, but I thought it was such a big deal. And so just remember that change really takes a lot of time, and to not beat yourself up over and over again. If you have to learn the lesson twice, 3 times, maybe 100 times, it takes a little bit to change. But the important thing is that you are willing to take the step forward and you're willing to make a change happen. And that honestly is the hardest bit, because most of the times we want to change, but we actually do nothing about it. So even listening to this episode, I'm proud of you because you're making a change right now. So just to summarize all of these 3 examples, that friend number 1 was the friend that had a really great experience, but no certain outcome from it. And so this led them to the ambiguous loss and feeling like, am I enough? Am I doing enough? Is there somebody better than me? And then number two example was the one about they had done all these good things. They had graduated, they had done the internship, but they didn't have a certain position that they wanted. And so this led them to do the social comparison and also upward comparison as well, which is again that positional bias where they're only comparing themselves to the top class of that pool. And then number three was the one with that flaky communication, which led them down the anxiety spiral of there's somebody better than me. They're not looking at the big picture. They're just honing in on the worst case scenario. And so that leads again to stalking the ex. And so all of these three examples are just all about how competition and comparison can really be realized in different ways. And it all leads to that downward spiral and really losing your self-worth in the process. And I thought I'd just do a little summary because I know I talked a lot about different theories and concepts, and I thought this was just a good way to just rephrase what we had talked about in the episode. So what I would tell the first friend or myself, really, because that's who it really was. I mean, there's other peers like this, but the one who didn't get the return offer but had a really good experience, just because something is ending, just because of that ambiguous loss when there's no clear cut answer or to why something ended and I guess no full certain outcome. I would just say that just because something's like coming to an end, it doesn't mean something else won't come. And this is where I talked about the importance of being in the present moment and looking for those opportunities. And just because you want something now doesn't mean that you might want it in the future. So really being open to the opportunities and not limiting your potential. Also reflect about what you enjoyed from it, because if you saw that you really enjoyed it, or if you didn't, there's clearly something of value or not that is aligning or misaligning with you. And use that baseline that you've gathered to inform your next decisions. I think that can be really helpful because when you're applying to other jobs or the same job, really remember what did you like about this or didn't like to inform you about what you might want to do in the future. Because again, I think values come from experiences. And so once you have more and more experiences, you can uncover what you like and what you dislike even more easily. And then another thing for the LinkedIn check, really remember your purpose for being on that app. If you're on that app to simply just compare yourself to people and confirm that you're behind, so you're going to look for that confirmation bias of people that are better than you, and you're going to find it, and then you're going to feel really crappy because your self-worth is going to dwindle because you've been seeing everybody else's accomplishments. So when you're on the app, remember the purpose of being on that app is to inspire you and also to uplift your friends. I truly believe that LinkedIn is a great space, just like all social media, to see what your friends are up to and congratulate them on their experiences and their achievements. Because I know that when I do it, it feels so good to me. And also they do the same for me and I feel good as well. I really do believe in the fact of when you support other people, it in turn supports yourself. And I don't mean that in like a selfish way. I just feel like cheering on others really just builds a community that we can all grow into. But maybe that's just a little naive perspective. Also, LinkedIn is a great place to just connect with people. That could be a purpose in itself, is just to connect with people, coffee chat with people. If you see something that you like, go up to them, cold DM them, whatever it is, and ask like, how did you get that position? How did you know what you liked? What is your career trajectory? And how did you get there? What do you advise that I do? I think it's so important and so useful, and you can turn it around so quickly if you just reframe the purpose behind what you're doing. Also, put a time limit on there. Put like 5, 30 minutes on there, whatever you want, and then cut it off after that. Remember, you are in control of the app. The app does not control you. Number three, if I were to tell a friend who's maybe dealing with struggling to be employed, or if they are having an experience where their manager is a little bit flaky or their boss is flaky or communication just isn't there with the person, I think what I would tell them is to really ground yourself in the reality. Like, is it as bad as it seems? And if it is, then maybe figure out what you're going to do next. What are your next steps from this? Because if it isn't as bad as it seems, which normally I'm going to say like 80% of the time it's not, then you can probably see the big picture a little bit fuller. And then you can lessen that emotional bit of the puzzle and erase the logical bit, because then you can see things for what they really are. And if it is really bad, then confront it head on. like confront it head on. And this comes back to actually another article that I've written is, are you the problem? Be honest, because it's so easy to not take accountability for things, but really ask yourself, like, did I do something to instigate this? And if you did, well, reflect on maybe what you could do better the next time. And if you're not, then you're probably imagining the worst case scenario that hasn't even happened before. So name it for them. If they're like stalking the competition or whatever, be like, you're doing an upward comparison right now. You're comparing yourselves to the top bit of the pool. You're not comparing yourself to the average. And yes, maybe they don't want to be the average, and that's why they're comparing themselves to the top people. But just remember that they're looking at the unrealistic standard of what is meant for them. And this is where I do want to preface that comparison isn't always bad. Sometimes it's a good thing, and it can be used for good if you're doing it for the purpose of that you value that thing that you're comparing yourself to. If you're valuing yourself to somebody who maybe got a promotion or maybe did something really well or got a compliment or got a job or whatever it might be, then look towards what they did and how you can also get there and use it as a source of fuel and motivation and inspiration for you to get there, not to demean yourself of like why you haven't gotten there yourself, because everybody is on a different timeline. Just because they got something doesn't mean that you can't get something as well. And also, you never know the full reason of why somebody got hired. It could be due to cultural fit, it could be due to networking, it could be due to just the right time that it happened for them. You never fully realize. And yes, people can have more experiences than you, but you can also get the job a different way because of just who you are and the energy that you bring. One of the best advice that I ever got in hiring is that you can teach skills, you can teach Excel, you can teach all those things, but you can't teach passion. And so just remember that the next time you're kind of going down a downward spiral. And then tool 4 is really just to do that past self-check. I think it's really important to just journal and reflect on all your accomplishments, no matter how big or small, because I think we can get really stuck in looking towards the future and what's next and what we need to do, but also just congratulate yourself for the things that you have achieved. And it can be as little as just coffee chatting with somebody or reaching out to somebody on LinkedIn or to hear about their experiences. It doesn't have to be a job or promotion, those concrete milestones that we're always looking towards. I think this can also just help you refocus on yourself instead of other people, which is so easy to do. I hope this episode helped you, and hopefully it helps you stop stalking the ex or competition as much, just learning about all these psychological concepts and the neuroscience and what happens towards the brain when all this happens. I mean, we definitely have a lot of tendencies, and this brain is, oh my gosh, it is a nutcase sometimes. I think I just really want to leave you guys with a sense that I don't have this all figured out. I definitely have a tendency to compare myself to other people, but really just remember what you value, because that will always help you reframe the situation and again refocus on yourself and what you want your life to look like. So if you leave feeling a little bit more hopeful, then I've done my job. I'm going to close my episode off how I always do on who am I clearly becoming. And when I do these questions, I don't mean to say that like I have it all figured out. I really find that clearly becoming is kind of like a play on words, because we're always becoming. We're never clear on who we are, and we are never clear on our set identity. I think identity is evolving all the time, and that's the purpose of becoming and why I have that in the name, because we are always becoming. Every single day we have a new experience, a new insight, a new perspective that changes our mindset and who we think we are and what we want. That's why I do these things, and that's why it changes sometimes, or sometimes it stays the same. But anyways, who I am clearly becoming is somebody who is recognizing that change is not as easy as one might think, and that just because you can change something one time doesn't mean that it automatically happens the next time. And so to really give myself grace that change does take time, and I might have to learn a lesson hundreds of times before I actually get the fruit of that labor. So that is something that I am clearly becoming. And yeah, I'd love to know what you guys are comparing yourself with. I also would love to know maybe if you have dealt with ambiguous loss before in a job setting or anything like that, where you might have not gotten the thing that you wanted, but you had a good experience. I hope you can relate to this feeling. And I hope this episode, again, just inspires and motivates you to, refocus on yourself and also just realize that stalking people isn't abnormal. Like a lot of us do it and it can show up in so many different forms. So, yeah, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you, truly. And definitely screenshot a quote that you found impactful in this episode and comment down below any other experiences that you might be dealing with. I'd love to research them and see what I can find. And yeah, I'll see you in the next episode. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.